Okay, we're going to get started if we could, 6 o'clock. So I'm going to call the meeting to order right at 6 o'clock. We have a fairly full agenda today, so I'd like to keep moving through it as quickly as possible to get to the meat of it, which is really the budget presentation tonight. So we'll start if you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Next agenda item is communication to the Board of Education. Jeff, do we have any communication?
I do. I have 2 emails to share, and I will be submitting them also to Elizabeth, our minute keepers, for public consumption. The first is from Sue London. It states, "Dear Dr. Souza," just for the record, I'm not a doctor. This is just Mr. Souza, but I appreciate the accolades. "I am writing to you and the New Hartford Board of Education regarding an armed officer for the school system. I would ask that this email be read at the next BOE meeting currently scheduled for February 20th, 2024. I had the opportunity to serve on this board for 15 years. That included the attempt to close Bakerville School as the district school population did not warrant 3 schools. Actually, we could have all 3 schools at Antolini School. I was serving as the chairperson of the BOE during this time. We had identified Bakerville School as the one to close, as it was the oldest school and mostly a wooden structure with no fire suppression system. The portables did have a fire suppression system. I resigned from the board when a very irate member of the public yelled and threatened me. I didn't need to be subject to that type of treatment. I say all of this for consideration as it relates to an armed resource officer. I am opposed to having armed personnel in our schools. We as taxpayers paid to have all of the safety measures put in place. If they were used properly, we can control who accesses our school. We certainly don't need 3 officers because we don't need 3 schools. In addition to reading this to the BOE, I would ask that this email be filed with the meeting minutes of the meeting this is presented. A concerned citizen and taxpayer, Sue London." I also received an additional email titled, "We Love New Hartford Schools." This is from Laura Shears. "Hello. I just wanted to acknowledge the amazing efforts of both New Hartford Elementary and Antolini schools. Yesterday, I accidentally swapped my daughter's shoes and Valentine's in their backpacks and sent them off to their separate schools with each other's items. I had no idea until we got home yesterday, and they both informed me when they sent them with the wrong things, but that it was okay because there's a, quote, mail delivery, close quote, between schools, and that someone swapped their items for them during the day. This was just so surprising to me, so appreciated, and just another reason why I am so thankful to have my children be part of such an amazing school district. I reached out to both principals to thank them, but wanted to make sure to express my gratitude to you as well. Thank you for all that you, your amazing staff members and teachers do for the children of New Hartford each day for the children of New Hartford. We are such a lucky town." Laura Shears.
That's all right?
That is,
pieces?
those are the 2 pieces that I received, yes, sir.
Copies of those?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, public comment. Would anybody like to address the board? Come on up, Jay. Please just start by stating your name and address, please.
Jay Bailey, 575 Main Street. On the subject of the guards and the monitoring that I suggested, I don't know if the board has taken that into consideration yet, or if they're starting to talk about it. Interesting, the lady pointed out about the 3 schools. I was informed, I thought the same thing. I was informed by the board here that you're in full attendance and you do need the 3 schools, but you do need to consolidate it. And it's going to take time as the town's growing quickly. There's a big development. I was at that meeting when they were talking about down by 44. If that went into place, probably Wicked Street would be thrown off the chart. So a school, getting a real school built here on these grounds isn't going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen in years. So you really have to get a committee started and start, researching everything that has to be done and get the grants in order. And so it's a process, I think, that has to get started now. Doesn't, you can't do it once you need it, because you're already going to be behind the 8 ball. And as far as the security system goes here, the monitoring, I think, is more important than you might realize. And the more you look at the monitoring, the better it looks. I originally had threw a second idea about the buses, but I'm starting to have second thoughts about that. The bus system may be able to cheaply monitor it, but I don't think it'd have the same effectiveness as one person undistracted in a room with just the cameras, and it's their job to monitor the cameras. And that's almost more important than having the guard. If you just had a good monitor and the door's locked, you'd be halfway there, right? Before you even hired a guard. So I think the monitor should be even first if you were to hire one or the other. I don't think the guard should be in place first, but I think they should both be together. Maybe Bakersville is the only school that could be properly secured by one guy. But even a school this size here, one guy walking around the halls can't secure it without a monitor. So the more you look at it, the more we talk about it, I think the more you're going to find the pros, not the cons against it. So I hope that you're going to move forward with a committee with a monitor, because I would guess you'd need a job description on that as well, because you can't just hire people without a job description. So there's two committees you need, one for the monitor job and another for a grant to build a real state-of-the-art school that would pull together for the whole town.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is Board of Education Chair Report. I think the first thing I'd like to start with is, again, to the board, thank you for accommodating the shift in being available tonight for a special meeting and the last minute change from yesterday. It's great to see that we have the majority of the board here to be able to go through the budget presentation today. The second thing I wanted to mention is we did add an item to the agenda under new business, item H on your agenda. Today we have, again, one particular item under there, but I wanted to make sure the board was aware that we do have a board policy that allows any agenda item, or it allows an agenda item to be added to the agenda for the meeting if it's not posted with 2/3 vote. What's that? In a regular meeting, correct. It can't be done at a special meeting like today, but it can be done in a regular meeting. So we're going to keep this agenda item on here as new business. It's open for additional topics to be added to our agenda if something comes up between the posting of our agenda on the Thursday, Friday prior to the Tuesday meeting. But we do ask that if something comes up and you do want to add it to the agenda, just extend the courtesy to myself and to Superintendent Sousa so that we can prepare for it. We don't want to put something on the agenda that are not prepared to respond to when we get here on Tuesday, because things do come up and we want to make sure we have the opportunity to do that. And then the final thing on my chair's report is, as we enter the budget season, again, I appreciate everybody's attention and efforts. As I'm sure if you started flipping through the budget that we were provided late last week, we do have some really big pressures on us with the budget season. So again, I do appreciate you all here, and again, your attention and your effort, again, asking questions and listening to our superintendent and the needs of our school as we go through it. All right, moving on to the next is superintendent report. Jeff?
Thank you so much, Tim. First, I'd like to extend a happy Valentine's Day, though it be belated, to our community, and also a very special thank you and shout out to both Julia and Indy. I received a Valentine, my first as a superintendent. It says, "Dear Mr. Sousa, today you rock. Love, Julia and Indy." So if you're listening, I appreciate you. You are historically in my mind forever. I've never received a Valentine as a superintendent, but I appreciate you very much for thinking of me and sending along some amazing Ghirardelli chocolates, which I absolutely will definitely devour and eat. So thank you. Wanted to update the board on the agenda item of school security grants. So the Board of Finance, we had a meeting with them last week virtually, and they were supportive of the recommendations to move some of the amounts to meet our local security match, our grant match. So the three pieces were to reallocate the paving of the walkway for $20,000, and that was changed over to indoor air quality, and with a cost of $15,675, which left $4,325. The other items that were there were the reallocation of rotting trim for 10,000. And the other item there was the remainder of the technology budget under capital for a total of $35,000 to help us achieve our local grant, so, or get closer to our local grant amount. So the Board of Finance was supportive and permitted that. So I will be releasing, after just confirming that here with the Board of Education, I'll be releasing just a revised capital expenditures sheet that supersedes the one that we had on last year. The next is we had an amendment to our non-lapsing account. So the Board of Finance, as our funding source, has $100,000 and as a non-lapsing account. And we, in September of 2023, the Board of Ed, we had earlier this year calculated that we'd have $25,000 in savings at the end of the fiscal year. So we asked to have that added to our non-lapsing account. Upon further review and the Board of Finance motion to amend this, it was not $25,000, it was $14,898. The reason behind this is that tuition checks that were received by the Board of Education were then expended to pay staff salaries. That is not permitted. So lesson learned and my mea culpa. And we have a surplus of $14,898. So Board of Finance, again, supported and amended that so that our auditing can also be completed. So that took place, and wanted to give quick updates on that from last Tuesday with the Board of Finance. A special thank you to our chairwoman, Carrie Guilfoyle, and all of the Board of Finance members. They were extremely supportive, asked amazing questions, great questions, and ultimately supported the Board of Education's moves with the recommendations that were given. All right. Now on to the 2024-2025 budget presentation. So this is the first of at least, if needed, 4 workshop series that we have scheduled at the end of your superintendent's proposed budget. You'll see on the last page, there's a budget timeline we're kicking off tonight. That's obviously been revised due to the change of the meeting today. But our budget workshop series will continue on March the 5th. We'll meet with the Board of Finance if there's any adjustments or changes, and then have more budget workshops as needed on March the 16th and also March the 18th and April the 4th if necessary. Referendum is scheduled for May 7th, 2024. So just a quick look at that.
Is it possible to add 3 additional dates to your calendar, to your budget timeline? One of them being on March the 12th, when the CapEx is presented to the Board of Finance. The meeting on April the 3rd, which is the public hearing. And the one on the annual budget meeting on the 23rd of April.
Sure. I just have a question on the April. I have April 2nd on my calendar from
It's
the.
April 3rd, because
Okay.
voting is on April 2nd, and we can't do both things on that day because the voting and the meeting is held in the same senior center. So that public meeting has been moved to April the 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, she said March 12th CapEx, April 3rd public hearing, April
And
23rd.
the April 23rd is the annual budget meeting, followed by the annual town meeting. That way, everybody is informed of all the different meetings that they can attend.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
You got it. All right, so I will start off first by, I have a lot of thanks because putting together a budget is not a one-person job. It takes literally a village from everyone in central office. Special thanks to Janet Terenzi, my executive assistant, to Amy Norton, our fiscal assistant, to Kellyanne Snowden, assistant to our director of student services, and Gail DeBella, our bookkeeper. A lot of work, a lot of fine tuning and review and budget projections, with a lot of work that goes into contingencies as well, because we're also in negotiations with our MERA contracts that are union-based for, as I've mentioned before, our secretaries, our custodians, and our para-educators. A very, very great special thanks also to Mike Lynch, who's in the audience here. He's our Director of Student Services. He is masterful at his work and helped to provide a lot of guidance relative to our needs for 2024. Also to Dr. Kelly Carroll, who's also here in our audience, and to Amy Kennedy, our school administrators, and Heather Mathis is also here. There she is, our curriculum coach for the district, because everyone, we believe in a collaborative method of collecting information from all of our stakeholders to develop the correct and appropriate measures for meeting the needs of all of our students. And that is the key driver. So Mike will be up at a portion of our budget presentation this evening to go over some of the sections of special education related costs. So just a special thank you to all of them as well. And thank you to Paul Carmen for the IT side, and Linda Fitzgerald as well for our subscription services, anything related to technology, and providing those budgetary numbers as well, so that we can, again, make sure that we have everything accounted for and under review, I would say thousands of times. So just to review and recap again, some of the budget drivers that we have to work through, as Tim just alluded to. We have an 11.6% increase in our healthcare, which is a significant cost. And you'll see that through the budget process. We have $100,000 less of federal pandemic relief funds, because those have been obviously expended. So we have those things to work through. We have contractual employee increases, which we'll go over, special education costs, contracted transportation costs. As I've mentioned, we have, unfortunately, the governor's proposed cuts to education across the state of Connecticut, and then our contingencies of negotiating with our merit unions as some of the considerations and things to go over in our budget. So what I'd like to do is we'll fluctuate back and forth. I have a presentation that I'd like to share with everybody in the community and also the folks that are here, and then we'll go into some of the more meat and potatoes of our proposed budget as well. So if you just turn your attention to the screen behind me. Paul, we good or? Yep. Okay. So just as a quick reminder of our mission statement of the Board of Education. Thank you. How about now? Thank you, sir. So this is our mission, obviously, to provide the absolute best for all of our children, pre-K to sixth grade in New Hartford Public Schools. Here is our overall total budget increase of $769,000. So it's a recommendation of a 8.17 of an increase. Here are some of the drivers. These are the overarching. These aren't the exact numbers pulled out of the budget, but these are some of the drivers that I was talking about earlier. For employee salaries and contractual increase plus step, we're at $364,000. Pupil services, and Mike will come up and share a little bit more about this. We've had an increase of $410,000. Employee benefits, again, as a overall with health insurance included, and a nice offset with some of our pension funding, which we did not anticipate as a decrease. We're at $131,000. Just skip it, I'll come back to that. Additionally, if we look at plan operations, we have an increase of about $30,000. Pupil transportation of $86,000. And some of the offsets that I want to make sure that we also take into consideration, we have increased the amount of grants that we've applied for and also have been funded either through the state or federal government of $299,000. And again, I had mentioned real quickly some of the employee benefits as a decrease or offset of $51,328. Last year at this time, I was reporting that our magnet school tuitions had dropped. We had less special education costs because of the bus. So these are the offsets in comparison, if you will. If we did not have those offsets, we would be talking about $1 million plus, which would be about a 10.6% increase. So we are very grateful for the grants that we received from Title I all the way across to IDEA 611 and 619 to offset all of the costs of what it takes to run our school system.
Do the grants that you're talking about here, do those include like grants that we're still waiting on answers for? Or is this everything that has already been, we know that these grants are coming?
Sure, these are the grants that are already in place. Yeah, nothing else that I could project or predict. Yeah. Good question. Thanks, Kristen. All right. So if I just walk us back here, I want Mike to just give us a little bit more insight. So Mike will come up and just present to us a little bit more insight of what those special education drivers and costs are as one of the major pieces, because we've had students move in and then through the evaluation process realize that we have to meet student needs where they're at. So I'll invite Mike Lynch to come on up at this point. Right up here would be great, sir. And I could walk you through, or if you want the mic, whatever is most convenient for you.
So this is just looking at since March of 2023. This is why we did hire an additional special education teacher, because since that time we had a 27% increase in special education students. There was a lot of students that moved into district, and then also we identified some more students. So that really justifies why we really needed an additional special education teacher here at Antolini. Another proposal that I'm suggesting is we have one of our speech pathologists that works in Hartford Elementary. She's 3 days a week. When we hired her in 2022, there was only one preschool classroom, and that is our reverse mainstream preschool classroom. Now we have two, and since we hired her in 2022, she's had a 57% increase in her caseload. And the number of IEP hours that she's servicing students for speech and language has increased by almost 25%. So that's the driver behind why we're proposing to add one more day to her schedule. So she would be 0.8 or 4 days a week. I just jumped through that. Does anybody do you have any questions about it?
Yeah, so when you say 57% increase, what is that in numbers? Is it one person to two is a 50% increase? What is it?
No, so I have to pull it out. But when I look, I think for the speech pathologist, I can get you that specific number. I have it in my coat. You're talking about, I don't want to misquote it. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, I just didn't know what 57% of what number. That's just a percentage. Like I said,
Yeah.
one person to two is 50%.
No, yeah. No, it's not that small of a
understand
number.
that,
Yep, I'll get you that information. And the same thing, I actually do know the numbers for this one because I have it fresh in my mind. So our occupational therapist. So right now she works 4 days a week, and we're proposing to have her be a full-time employee. So in the 2022-2023 school year, she started with, I think about 13 students on her caseload, and she ended the year with almost 50. So that's that 360% increase. And then just in the start of this year, since September, her caseload has increased by about 42%. So she's increased about 10 students right now. Those numbers don't always, so some students last year moved on. So it's not the exact same number. But I'll get you the numbers for the speech language pathologist. And then the school counselor, we were able to hire a school counselor under a grant. The grant, unfortunately, ends this year. So if we are to keep that school counselor, we would need to add her into the budget. Just some information about what she's done since September. She's had 350 student sessions. She's done classroom lessons at all of the classrooms in Antolini and Bakerville. We do a BEST screener, which is a screener for kids' social emotional well-being. And so from that, sometimes we form groups. An example of this could be kids that pop with maybe concerns about anxiety, and she'll do small groups with them. So she's completed 5 of those groups already. And we do it 3 times a year, so more of those will come. She's also done 5 of the MTSS groups, which is just like the school-based referral. So if teachers or staff see concerns, she's also done groups like that. And she's also taken over a couple clubs. Just other information to keep in mind. I think that was,
Yeah, that's it.
let me get you that number, but
Thank you, Mike.
Is it possible to get copies of those slides?
Of course, they'll all be sent.
Thank you.
so it went from 14 to 23.
Okay.
So it depends. So some students you might see one time, and for some students she'll see every day. So it really depends on the level of need of the student. So for some students it could be short amount of time, depending on the need of services. So some students she'll see every single day that she's there. So that's more what I recommend, the IEP hours, and that in the services that you provide.
All right. Any other overall questions regarding some of the finer details that Mike presented? Okay. All right. Major kudos. Mike had made sure that this was the position that we had discussed a while ago, and we were so grateful because it provided the mental health support across all of our schools. And with the addition of the halftime individual from the Ed Advance grant that they were able to secure, we have mental health support across the continuum of every day at all 3 of our schools, which is very, very powerful. So thank you, Michael. And as he explained, that grant, so that individual was paid grant funded all year this year. Next year, that grant expires at the end of September, and that'll be one of the additions that we're recommending here in our budget. Yes, please.
Again, one of the things that I know everybody's wondering, and I know, Mike, you're out there looking at them, is additional grants. Is there anything we're pursuing currently, something that you've got your eyes on?
So there's nothing right now for grants. This is the kind of the downfall with grants, is depending on the length of, how long they last. This grant was, we were told it was a 2-year grant, but it really wasn't, when it really comes down to it. So with grants, it's tricky and not everything works out the way you envision. So it's hard to sustain something on a grant.
Yeah, and what Mike is also suggesting is sometimes apply for the grant, receive the grant, then conditions change for the grant. Just to be fully transparent, as we always are. So it may change the requirements of, they may ask for additional memorandums of understanding and then additional working conditions to change, so that we have to negotiate and go back and forth with them. And then sometimes the headache is not worth it because it crosses lines that we don't feel comfortable doing, or we have to consider that as a department and for our school district. So just some more to share with our grants. And then they sometimes change the timelines of when they expire and when they don't, which has implications on our budget, of course. So, all right, I want to walk everybody over. If you're in the actual document now, please. And these are all posted online as well for public consumption. But if you're on I want to walk us over to the enrollment and class sizes and just have some brief commentary on this particular page. This page, if you look on the 23-24 column, even best projections, we could not have predicted the amount of move-ins that we received. So that number last year was somewhere around 442 at the down at the bottom on the left-hand side for all of our population. You see that a snapshot was captured just recently, and we were at 456, just as an illustration of the wild gamut that we run with all of the best tools of births, which are recorded here in New Hartford at the town clerk's office. Also looking at our pre-K students, we can never project with exact precision who will enroll and who will not. We start early. We started even earlier this year with the cutoff date. So major kudos to Amy and to Mike, who have been working diligently with all of our school staff to get the information out to our families and publicly, and also to Christine Hayward, who sent out information as well. We're working as a town and as a board together to make sure we have accurate projections of where our kiddos, what we believe the enrollment will be for our students. But again, it's not an exact science. It's really trying your best with the information that you're given to project all of those numbers. So next year, you'll see a projected total of 438. I would anticipate that being higher. I could never tell you exactly how many, because again, we tried our best last year to project that and we were under for sure. So it's truly unpredictable. And again, that has to do with a lot of those factors, like I mentioned, move-ins, also homeschool families deciding time to go back to public schools, and which I'm very proud of. And also our magnet schools families changing their mind and saying they want to come back to public schools. Again, something I'm extremely proud of, and all of our staff should be as well as the Board of Education.
I have a question.
Yes, Penny.
The new kindergarten regulation for how old you can be when you enter school, do you anticipate we'll be having less children? Or will there be more families asking for an exception?
Sure. So this year we've structured it because we don't want to penalize families. We don't believe that that's fair, and we want to be open partners with our families. So we have scheduled an assessment date where we will give our feedback and our input to families that are making this decision, whether or not to send their children. The waiver process then is, after the recommendation has been given to the family, they could submit, a request to the building principal, which would be Amy Kennedy, to continue that. So the parameters and what all of the associations, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, we're all recommending to the state a hard, fast guideline date of September 1st versus it being September 1st, but you may also submit a waiver after a screening process. It leaves too much ambiguity. So I don't believe that this year we'll have that repercussion, and we'll monitor that closely next year, Penny, to answer it specifically. I don't think we'll have a great fluctuation this year. Next year we may, dependent again on how hard and fast they want to make that legislation for the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. All right, let's move into regular education, just for some quick highlights. Under the regular education professional salaries, you'll see they're listed. Again, Mike was instrumental in securing the behavioral health grant, which you'll see is a offset because it only lasts for the month of September. Prior to that, this year, that position was fully paid for via the behavioral health grant. But what we're seeking here, and we're recommending to continue our services that we have currently in place, is $163,000. That is the variance that's listed there. And also that maintains our small class sizes. And if you recall, over the summertime with the increased enrollment of kindergartners, we had to hire an additional staff member, an additional teacher to, again, remain with our small class sizes. So those two elements make up that particular increase. Under instructional assistance, we've had some attrition and some movement there, so that was a nice savings. Substitute teachers, a small increase there to maintain our continuity when our teachers are out with illness or professional development, that we have a wonderful pool of substitute teachers that really step up to the plate. I've been able to meet them, a lot of them personally, that come into the central office, and they're just a delight. So a special kudos to Kelly and to Amy for interviewing very high quality people and recommending them to be with our kiddos. Yes, Kristen.
With regards to the attrition within the instructional assistants, we don't need to replace any instructional assistants? Is that just?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, we're good. Yep. Teacher stipends. Teacher in charge. You'll see that it's a blank there. It's not truly a blank. Again, full transparency always. Teacher in charge is a stipend. So we're always looking to make sure that we tighten up our budget and make it the best that it possibly can be. And that has been listed down below if you'll look in teacher stipends, because the teacher in charge is listed as a stipend in the teacher's contract. So again, moving everything nicely and neatly versus it being a standout all on its own, you'll see it listed there below on the teacher stipends. Band is now part of the school day, so that's no longer a stipend. And toileting down below is no longer listed in the teacher stipends for regular ed as it is a special education stipend, and you'll see that later listed. Curriculum assessments, you'll see there that we no longer use the NWA MAP growth. We have moved on to STAR reading and math, and we've always used DIBELS. And on the next page, you'll see that there's a projected small town right to read grant. Very thankful for that. Thankful to Heather Mathis for her work on that. So we'll be using that money to offset that request. Continuing on with purchase services, no changes there. Very minimal, if any. Craig Magnet Schools under 560 tuitions is an area that we could have had a savings. The governor's original proposal was to have a cap set on what our district pays for magnet school tuition for other students to attend their magnet schools. Unfortunately, that cap has been removed in the most recent proposal. I've sent on communication to board members so that you could have that time to reflect on that and really think about that and share your voice of concern with our representatives, Mark Anderson or Lisa, and even to the governor's office. But that would have saved maybe $17,000 to $20,000, but that cap has been removed, unfortunately. So we do have to account for paying 100% of that tuition as a contingency. That also, the cap that magnet schools can charge a local school district has also been eliminated, so they can increase their tuition with no set max, which is not good news. District travel, no changes there. Teaching supplies, we've got all of those listed there. Those are very minute increases, again, to make sure that we have all of the materials in place for all academia and all of our specials and programming. Textbooks and resources, again, another area where we consolidated just to make things a little bit easier to interpret. So you'll see that reading and language arts have now been combined into one item because it really does support the idea that we're reading and writing and comprehending all in one line versus being two separate items. They are really one and the same. There's also an awesome piece here that you could see this projected small town right to read grant of $40,000 to help offset those costs, which is a significant savings. So again, special thanks to Heather Mathis and the team for making sure we are able to access that, follow all the criteria of that, and be awarded that grant for next year. Wrapping up in regular education, we've got periodicals, which has not changed dramatically, and nor has equipment. And that is the regular education component of our budget.
Want to pause there just for questions?
Sure.
If we go through each section, we'll pause at the grant totals. Does anybody have any questions on regular education?
Sorry, I'm not really that familiar with grants. When you say a projected grant, what is the timeline on which we'll know when we actually get that grant? Any of those grants, does it vary?
So some, yeah, they do vary. Right now, we're very confident that we'll have secured that amount based on the criteria that we have to follow. But again, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes they change things and then we're, debating it. But these were very confident. Otherwise, I would not submit them here. These are projected to be as is.
Okay.
Yeah. If there are any changes now until we finalize our budget, then I would make those changes with the board.
Any other questions? So again, looking at this, the main driver, right, is the salaries, right, which are contractual increases, right? 2.9.
Correct. Yeah.
And then it's the hiring of the additional teacher from last year.
That is correct.
So that's the,
And then the behavioral health grant being expended completely with our school counselor, and then picking up that salary for the remainder of the 24-25 year outside of the month of September. Those are the main drivers there. And then the other savings are the grants, which are helping to continue to support our instruction.
okay. There are no more questions. We'll move on.
Okay. Moving on to special education, we've had a preview already, so thank you again to our director, Michael Lynch. The first line you'll see there under professional staff with a grant, the IDEA 611 grant ready to offset at $54,000. There's a increase there of $200,000, 731, and that significant increase is due to our increased special ed population that we are serving. So that was the increase to the FTE of 1.0, also to our speech increase, and also to the pre-K teacher that is certified for special education and regular education. So that was a great addition to our team. So we have 2 classrooms that have both of the reverse mainstream models in place versus just having the one, which is a limitation in the past. Next, under our special education paraeducators, again, to continue to support our students with our most sensitive needs, whether it be behavioral, academic, social, emotional needs. That reflects the increase in staff there for our special education paraeducators. You saw in the past that those were offset by the grant of 619 that we still have. Unfortunately, again, ARP ESSERs and ESSER 2 have all expired. So those are some of the savings that we will not be realizing moving forward. Under pupil services and therapies, as Mike had described earlier, you'll see there a $51,000 increase. Here we have a wonderful, again, grant opportunity that Mike has capitalized on with our registered behavior tech, which is fully grant funded. So that was a position that was added to our budget, but is being completely offset, which is phenomenal. The increases there that you'll see are for occupational therapy, as Mike described earlier, to make sure that that person is a full-time individual to cover the needs of our students. We'll see an increase in our BCBA support, that is a board-certified behavior analyst, to continue to support all of our staff, administration, and paraeducators in supporting them, giving recommendations and helping our students with behavioral challenges. Under physical therapy, we've got a slight decrease there. And then the registered behavior tech portion is at the end, but again, that's offset by the ARPA school mental health specialist grant that Mike was able to secure. IDA 611, a slight increase there for the grant. And then the 619 grant, slight decrease in that. Continuing on, no changes under evals and other services. Testing supplies continue to increase, and as we need them to meet the needs of our students and making sure that we're evaluating appropriately. In services has dropped. We're not looking to integrate Power Schools with IEP as of yet with CT SEDS. So we're pushing that back, and the behavior and academic consulting has been removed as well and offset by the previous BCBA consultation previously in the budget. Outplacements for our students that are not within district because of needs needing to be met outside in either therapeutic settings or other settings to better fit their needs based on their identification under IDEA. That is projected to increase by $26,000 at $420,000. Again, this is a reminder that this pays for tuition, sometimes one-to-one support, all of those elements that students need when they're in their outplacement settings. Extended school year is also listed below here. That is our ESY program for students that need continued support during our summer months. We have an amazing team that runs the program and runs it extremely well and provides all services for our kiddos. We are looking to deter regression so that when they come back in September, they're in better shape. We don't want regression. We want students to continue to make the great progress that they've made all school year long. All right. Trying to think if there's any other major drivers, but the dollar variance at the end is the $410,000 for our special education budget component.
Is there, I'm sorry, is there anything are there any grants out there to replace those ESSER grants?
No, unfortunately, those are federally funded through the pandemic. Those are pandemic relief funds. And
Oh, those are for the COVID.
correct.
Okay,
And those have been completely expended,
okay.
unfortunately.
And what are teaching supplies under special ed?
Teaching supplies under special ed, if we go over to the narrative, should give us a little bit more information. So if we look at 616, they're required for students with special needs included literacy workbooks, math and reading manipulatives, visual and auditory supports. It also includes the pre-K screens, which we're doing and those costs and supplies.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Then in total, you might have said it earlier, Mike, how many students does this serve? Just numbers in aggregate, total numbers,
What?
For our special ed.
special ed,
About 110.
110?
It's about 25%.
Wow.
I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up because it's kind of a macro question or point. But, you know, I teach in the high school and the amount of students since I started teaching that receive special ed is more than tripled in my 30 years of teaching. And you look at this trend and it's something we have to think about for years. Because for whatever reason, there's a lot of reasons to get into. You know, parents really wanting their kids to get special ed services and things like that. But this is a problem that, you know, it's a problem in the sense that it's a cost that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And I don't have the answer for it, but it's more than half of the budget increase. And I mean, I think this is the elephant in the room, right? Everybody's looking at it. And something we have to think about. I don't know how to address it. If there's maybe some way, if I could just talk to parents and just say how I felt sometimes. Because I was talking with a parent this summer who was trying to get her kid special ed services, and I didn't think they needed it. And I wanted to tell them that, but you know, then you're going to get into an awkward conversation with the parent. But I don't know if there's some way to change a mindset, because I think think about that percentage, 25% is huge. And I think there's a mindset where parents feel like if they do this, and they intend the best things for their kids, that they're going to get extra services and so on and so forth. But, you know, we pay a big price for it, as you can see. And I mean, I'm talking on a macro level, but we have to start thinking about ways to address this. I don't know if we are attracting more students to come to our district. I don't know if you know that, because we're really good at it, special ed. I do notice that there's a big increase in testing, and I see it at our school. There's a lot more people asking for testing services to see if they qualify for special ed. And the one thing I am going to say that I've noticed is it seems to be more and more rare that we have kids graduate out of special ed. I mean, my goal was always to take a kid, figure out what they need help with, help them acquire the skills they need to cope, you know, with whatever it is, and move on. And it does seem like that now, once a kid gets into special ed, they're lifers. And I don't know how we address that as a board of ed or as a school. It's tough on our end too. That's just my 2 cents I got to throw in there, because, you know, I live it every day.
Thank you, Frank. I would say that from my experience insofar and my impressions relative to our special education department, I would not be surprised, to say the least. I know that when I speak with parents, they are extremely happy with the services that we provide. They say so in PPT meetings. They'll say so in communication to our leadership team that's sitting in the audience. So I know that they love that. They love the care that they receive. They love the support that they feel for their kiddos and the genuine unconditional love that our staff members provide for our kiddos. So destination, I don't know, but it's not a secret either that we do our absolute best to provide for every single child. So that's what I would comment on that. Yeah. So it's not just New Hartford with our population. Yeah. The percentage is increasing across, and it's a national trend, not just the state of Connecticut either.
Yeah, I know about that trend because I see it at our school, and we have to think about what's it going to mean for the budget in 2 years and 3 years and 4 years. Um, This is a long-term thing.
So the salaries on this, in this section are 1.3 million plus or minus. How many individuals does that represent?
Staff number. How many staff members is that total?
$1.3 million in salaries. Just wondering how many people that is. Right, you have salaries for special ed professional staff at 863. And then you have special educator, special education paraeducator, that's another force. And then you have 118 above that. So it's actually 1.4 change in salaries. And then there's administrative assistant, 1.5 million. That's a lot of salary. Just wonder how many people that is and what their role is, their roles are in relation to the 110 students that they're enrolled in this
servicing.
program. Because those 110 students are also in the classrooms, correct?
They are. Yeah.
So then if this salary group represents 20 people, they're just using a round number, right? That's a lot of people that get put into the system to help on top of all the teachers we pay for, right? I mean, I know we provide a great service, and I'm not trying to address the same elephant in the room here. There's a lot of salaries here.
Correct.
And are we inviting, to Frank's point?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that around 25 is my number off the top of my head for paraeducators. Special ed, the entirety of the professional staff. I'll have to get an exact number back because I don't have that, but I know Mike's here and we'll note to that and come back to it.
Is there a requirement of, if there's 110 students enrolled, that you have to have a percentage of additional teachers for those 110?
No percentage. It's what's driven by each student's individualized educational plan. So whatever the team comes up with, that's with parents at the table, our team at the table, deciding what the special ed requirements are or needs are for the student to provide accommodations or modifications throughout the course of their instructional day. So there's no percentage set, but it's driven by the IEP, which sets forth the individualized programming or planning for each individual child. So as those accumulate over the course of weeks, days of time, that's how we determine how many of those staff members that will need to deliver what is written into an IEP, which is considered law. But no percentage, just to go back to the original question.
So obviously, I mean, a parent is going to advocate for 2 staff for their child. They're not going to advocate for less. They're not going to say, I want less, right?
Depends what they need. Yeah. Out of the evaluation,
You understand where I'm going with it.
I do.
There's no check and balance, it seems like, on this. And again, I'm speaking from a very uninformed look.
No problem.
It's not my specialty.
Yeah.
I'm relying on the experts, but it seems like it's a lot of staff.
The checks and balance are our team, our director of pupil services or student services, to ensure that what the child actually needs is being provided, not more, not less. And again, it's got to be an agreement with everyone at the table. So yes, sometimes, for example, a parent may say, I really feel like my child needs this service, X, and our team may disagree, and that's documented. It doesn't mean that that service will be provided just because the parent is advocating strongly for it. There has to be a need that is very explicitly unearthed either through the evaluation process, through our intervention model, that the intervention didn't work for X amount of period of time. There's got to be evidence to support the need for that special education service, whatever it may be: speech, OT, PT, BCBA support, counseling with our school psychologists, for example, or our social workers. It has to be very clear that that need is met, or that need is there. It can't just be, it would be great if I could just have extra counseling one more day a week. It's got to be driven, data driven, and then there's got to be results, which we do have. We set goals for each one of those needs that children have, and they have to demonstrate progress towards those goals. So again, and almost to go back to Frank's point, understanding that, you know, the perception is they're lifers. Our goal is always to have students exit, always to catch up, to be working independently. We don't want to continue to provide crutches, and we review constantly the amount of services that we provide to our students. But those have to be codified, and there's got to be strong evidence to support the need. It's not just, I want that because I think that's what my child needs. It's got to be clear.
Is there a benchmark to someone to graduate out of the program?
Yep, there are goals that they have to meet. For every individual goal, there's more than one, many times.
Could you talk a little bit about how frequently the IEPs are reviewed?
They are
And-
reviewed by law once a year. They are reviewed fully. Every student is reviewed completely once every 3 years in a triennial series of intense, long evaluation from cognitive across the board for every area. And we look very deeply at each student. It's a very comprehensive evaluation. So sometimes it could be more than once a year, depending on if the team feels that they want to share more relevant information with the parent, or if the parent requests a meeting, we convene more often on children as well to review their progress.
I can actually say, so my son went to school here in third grade and he had an IEP. And Tom, he definitely, so there's a lot, it's very comprehensive. And as he's aged, and, I obviously advocated and pushed a lot with the teachers in the school here. If you want more time to talk to them or whatever outside of the mandated stuff you can, but he's literally graduated like each year it's less and less and less. And now he's in regional, and there's really not much on the IEP essentially, right? There's still some stuff in place that by law they have to do, but it's really been minimal each year. And it's almost to the point where he's graduated out of it. He doesn't really need it anymore. So they really do a pretty comprehensive job with all those stakeholders at the table. I mean, I remember when he was in third grade here, like how many people were at the table, and each year it just got better and better, and he was doing less and less, and they recommended less and less and less. So there is that, they want to get them out of the program. They don't want them in that, and they are pushing for it. It's just that when you come to some really extreme kids that are really, really, really need help, I could see where that could be, that's where we have to have more teachers and more people to accommodate those needs, because they can be very, very extreme. My son didn't have that, but they definitely try to get you out of the plan.
So if we could, just to Tom's point on that, if we could get between now and our next meeting, the second look at the budget, just a breakdown of our staffing that
Sure.
within the special education system.
Yep.
That serves the 110 students. And then could we get an alternative look at what, and this is from my perspective, but if we had to outplace them, right? Where is there, I know we're trying to keep students within our system because of the cost associated with sending them and outplacing them. Where is that, break even, right? What's the cost to outplace?
So again, it goes back, it's dependent on the child's need. So the average, if I could just throw a number out there, would range anywhere between $170,000, $180,000 per student. Again, inclusive of transportation and educating the child outside of our district. So I won't be able to provide a break-even number, but that's
Just
the
that
average if you
Yeah,
think
if you
about
use
it.
that
And
number,
that,
just, yep.
and that could wreak havoc on our budget because, again, contingencies, the best that we possibly can. And I would have no way of providing that crystal ball of information of X student moves into our district, or student that's currently in our district has a traumatic experience and has tremendous difficulties functioning within our school environment, and what that would do to our budget. So,
Yeah, I think the intent is not the challenge, right?
Yeah.
What we need to do for our students. I think the
Yeah.
the questions,
That's not what I'm saying.
yeah,
That's not my intention. I'm just asking what we're doing. Again, my son had a program here too.
Yeah.
I'm not diminishing any goals here.
thank you, yeah.
There's a lot of staff. We're not just treating on special ed, it's regular ed. There's a lot of people here who gotta think about better. This
Sure.
8% is gonna fly over his county. You know exactly what's going on.
Jeff, is it
Sure.
possible statistically because that would be an interesting thing, right? Like we had kids here since third grade. What is the statistic of those kids that are migrating out of the IEP? Like, are we following that? So they started here really
Mhm.
extreme in third grade, but like now we're getting them, like by 8th grade or 7th grade, they're here. So we can show the difference, right? Like the program works, right? Like we're working through and then we're getting them to the point where they can get out of it or get less, right? So which means we need less teachers, less budget. Cause I mean, Frank, I've been talking about this for 2 years and, you know, a lot of people thought I wasn't caring about special ed, but I do. We can't sustain, like it's gone up every year and it's continuing to go up. So it's like, how do you become a good, how do we fiscally become responsible, not only internally to provide what our kids need, but also what the taxpayers are willing to endure, right? And the number just has not gone down. It just keeps going up and it goes up a lot. So the question is how are we going to pay for it? And nobody really has an answer. Like every year we go to the budget and the number is just higher and higher and higher. It's even higher now. How are we going to pay for it? That's the question. So I would love to see, do we follow that? Like, do we have the Quins and the, you know, his son and see like, okay, then 3rd grade, they had an IEP and they were really here, but now like, they're not really, they don't need that. And we're following him and it's becoming less and less and less. And so this is working, I guess is what I'm asking.
I don't believe we have something like that in terms of following each individual and then a % decrease of services needed, because the comparison across multiple identifications and services provided would be a little bit tricky to track. And then outside of our 6th grade purview, which would be, again, difficult to track, and how students and what they need, because that fluctuates and changes so much. Something certainly worth considering and under advisement for sure. I don't.
Worse and worse. It's not getting better.
Yeah, and this is not.
Clearly it's not getting better. Something we're doing isn't working.
Yeah, if it were just unique to New Hartford, I would say that, you know, something internally, but it's not. It's really across the board. If you visit anybody's budgets, this is a major driver across budgets in school districts across the nation, as more students need support and help. Some might be we're better at identifying, some might be we're better at providing services. It would be a great longitudinal study to look at students when first identified, but I know it's one of our goals, 100%. When I meet with our team, I am always asking what can be done to exit that, and they 100% assure me, I trust them implicitly that they're working to minimize those, the amount of services that students need, from paraeducator support to any other supports that we've identified initially. Our goal is always to remove that crutch and have students be more independent and be successful without the adult support, no matter what it looks like. So, I mean, I would guess that every student would eventually wean off, as you were mentioning before. I don't have a statistic though that would say, hey, by 3rd grade, X amount of students have decreased their support by 10% or anything like that. I understand it, and I appreciate the sentiment there. I definitely don't have that data to support that or even to provide that at this time. But it's something worth considering for sure. I know that it's a constant conversation for us.
Can you remind people to put on the phones? I've gotten messages they are having problems hearing.
Did everybody hear Penny? When you're speaking, just please put your microphone on. These people getting home can't hear. No. I'm probably guilty because I don't do it either.
I'm old too. But I can't hear.
All set for now? Okay. Adult education, this is a regional program that we deliver. We work with Ed Advance to provide adult education. So this does everything from biliteracy to teaching English through New Hartford's programming. We do this in consortium with Ed Advance. They provide this service for us. For our health services, this includes all of our nurses across our buildings, and stipends offset, or stipends as well for our lead nurse to work on specific medical plans for our students and to continue to communicate with our parents and communities, but that's their salaries and their stipend listed below that. The ad you'll see is overtime, as our nurses come to either need an end of the day kind of piece where students are in need, whether it be an injury at the end of the day or staying over to make sure that parents come and pick them up and communicate other additional information or communicate with parents in the evening. We wanted to provide for them, so that's why that's listed there. Substitute nurses is around $3,500, just again to continue to make sure that we have substitutes that will come in and provide medical coverage for our students. No changes there to the medical school advisor. Health supplies is slightly down, again noticing an overage there, and then equipment. So total there for dollar variance is $2,978 for our health services, which our nurses provide. We are so grateful to them. They take care of so many of our needs. And it's not just a place where we go to get Band-Aids anymore as well. If you haven't been to a nurse's office recently, it's also a nice support system. If you're having a little downtime or if maybe you forgot your snack, the nurses provide a lot of care and comfort for our kiddos and also for our staff too. So they're wonderful. We appreciate them tremendously. Improvement of instruction, just some clerical that I wanted to point out. Innovative teaching, it was an area that we don't have. It was a grant program under 618. So we're changing the innovative teaching headline to curriculum-based online resources, which was taken out of the technology line. The reason behind that is because these curriculum-based instructional components really belong with our curriculum, not just in the technology line and not being in the right category. So innovative teaching is moved to curriculum materials. Innovative teaching is our partnership for our Read Aloud Day, which we recently had. So that's now in the right place. And curriculum-based online resources are with our curriculum, which is where they should be. We'll see that further parsed out as we look through the rest of our curriculum document.
I'm sorry. So with all that,
Go ahead, sir.
with all that said, I think I understood that this $28,000 in improvement of instruction is a transfer from technology.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. Clerical, and then parsing it out where everything should be, instead of all bundled up in one
It's
place.
not a true, I'm sorry. So it's not a true overrun here.
Correct.
In this particular, as I see the 33,000.
Later on in technology, you'll see
Later
that
in
removed.
technology,
Yes.
thank
Yep.
you.
Exactly. Yep. So under improvement of instruction, changes here that are noteworthy are 324 under professional development are listed there. The multitude of grants, these are outstanding that we were able to attain these and implement them for our professional development. Great kudos to our PDAC team and also to Heather and Amy and Kelly, who continue to provide great professional development for all of our staff so that we can continue to improve upon the way that we work and instruct and teach and work with students. Same with our curriculum work. You'll see there some of the offsets. So these are the REAP grants, Title IV grants, ARP Right to Read grant again is listed there, and then REAP grant and Title IV as offsets to our improvement of instruction. Slightly below that, you'll see the 618 curriculum software component has been moved from technology. So we'll realize that later, that amount has been eliminated from technology and put into the right place. The curriculum software is really instrumental in driving our curriculum and helping with assessment and informing our instruction for all of our students. And you'll see that projected REAP grant there of $1,500 to continue to offset some of our curriculum softwares. Grand total there is $24,500 for improvement of instruction. Moving on to library media centers. Oh, yes.
Wait a minute, sorry. What was that first thing that you mentioned? What were you changing?
Under 618,
Okay, that was the same, okay, same
Yeah.
one, okay,
that's okay. Innovative teaching has been moved to the curriculum material line where it belongs.
Right.
Yeah,
thanks.
no problem. Under library media centers, so it's just specifically to that, we'll see that there are not many changes except for our online subscriptions. Now this is specific to library only. So prior to that, they were all tied up and in mixed places. So only the online subscriptions that pertain to library, which on 641, if you look, would be Alexandria, Tinker, Capstone, and Typing Club, which are relevant specifically to library media centers. That is their online subscriptions. So that's why you'll see that change there for online subscriptions. Those only belong there. Other slight increases, again, are under the professional dues, but those are the only drivers under Library and Media Center. Super happy to have Mr. Todd Miltimore with us. Brings an extensive amount of knowledge, and we're so happy to have him as our library media specialist. Moving on to technology, you'll see that 617 has been moved to improvement of instruction. Again, that's that curriculum software, which we just described. So if you look under technology, you'll see it reflected there below. You'll see the curriculum-based online resources have been moved to the improvement of instruction for our curriculum support. So at the end of the technology line, we're looking at a transfer. It's not really a cut, but a transfer of the 30,186 is less than what we had paid last year or budgeted for last year. But that, again, has been moved to the improvement of instruction line. Under Board of Education, the one change that I'm recommending is the recognition and hospitality for 1,000. And thank you to a special friend that reached out just to let me know that that did not calculate in the grand total. So that grand total down below should say 41,225. And then the dollar variance should be 900 in the positive, not a negative of 100. So we'll rectify that and make sure we get a next draft copy out to the board. So recognition hospitality is an area that, as the Board of Education, demonstrates individual value. It's on the narrative prior to. This is leveraging our culture, our support, and belief in people. So that's, celebration of life, just honoring them and celebrating them when they have amazing moments in life, and then unfortunately offering sympathy and honoring staff. But as we have challenges in life, we'd like to continue to recognize our staff. Under central office, we have the salaries of superintendent of schools, fiscal services assistant, admin assistant, all the way throughout. These are the projected salaries. The printing cost has been removed. So if you looked under the narrative, 593 will not be listed there anymore. We can handle all of our printing internally. We don't need to continue to budget $250 to take care of that. That is done internally, so we removed that. Data processing is another area where we've had overages because of internal staff having built capacity to run reports and take care of our state reporting. So that is continuing to decrease. For school offices, salaries of our amazing administrators that run our schools each and every day. Additional stipends there according to contracted language. Our secretaries, which also help run our buildings each and every day, answering phones, dealing with emergencies, changing plans for pickup and drop off. The list goes on and on and on and on. And also our amazing substitute coordinator stipend is listed there. Secretary substitutes, we're at the same $3,500. And then travel, we've moved here for alignment. It was not here prior to. So administrators, as they travel throughout the district or travel to professional development or conferences, that is listed here and budgeted. Prior to, it was embedded in another. It should be really its own separate line. Those are school offices. Plan operations, as you can see for our narrative, really have a tremendous impact on all of our work, though, that we're able to do each and every day. This includes purchase service contracts, our custodian salary, summertime work, anything we purchase. One of the highlights I want to make on 692, our heating oil. We use approximately 35,000 gallons of oil each year. This year, we were able to, we purchased in a large consortium via Ed Advance, and we were able to bring that down to $3 a gallon with East River down from $3.10, which is another area of savings. If we look at the custodian salaries, that is inclusive of all 4 custodians and the 4 full-time custodians and our part-time, all into one line there under custodian salaries 112. There's overtime related to checking in our schools, especially in the wintertime, to make sure everything is up and running from heating systems and making sure that the buildings are ready to open, especially in the wintertime and after rainstorms, or helping to navigate septic system pump outs that were needed. So those are the lines there for overtime. Part-time custodians getting our schools up and ready for summertime cleaning of all of our buildings. Substitute custodians in the need when they're out for illness. That's budgeted there. And then utilities from our water has increased slightly. Our electricity is down a little bit, and our refuse is up as well. And those are some of the costs associated with our utilities across the district. Emergency repairs, I've spoken to the board many times before. This happens to be, again, one of those contingency lines that's very unpredictable. I've dealt with everything under the sun with our custodians and our administrators, from dishwashers needing repair, from ovens needed to be replaced or cleaned, or pilot lights or locks that were broken in the buildings that needed emergency repairs, to doors, to windows being broke, anything like that. This falls under the categorization to take care of our schools, make sure they're in great shape, and they're unanticipated all of the time.
I have a question about the emergency repairs.
Yes, Kristen.
Why are we projecting such a big increase year over year? And why would we not have more planned for maintenance?
Sure, because the emergency repairs are really those things that are not predictable. So when talking about the building maintenance themselves, we're talking about painting and replacement of things that we could foresee that are in need. Emergency repairs come up out of nowhere. This particular year, we needed some flooring replaced at Antolini because the flooring started to bubble up and become unglued. It's just something that you just can't predict, and there's no real maintenance of it. Those are just some examples. That's why, I mean, I'm projecting this based on the amounts from 22-23. And again, this is built in with contingencies. If these are not monetary monies that are used, they're returned back to the town at the end of the fiscal year. I haven't been shy about it. It's one of the banes of my existence in the budget. Because I really, it's just such an impossible category to capture with buildings, the age of our buildings, and when things go wrong, they just go wrong and they're not expected.
I guess I'm just curious because there are other areas where we've had conversations around deferring maintenance for things, and then to see the emergency line item so much bigger compared to the maintenance is like a little, it just feels like, I understand that there are things that always come up. But I just don't know if we need to increase the maintenance to kind of forestall the emergency in any way, shape, or form.
Got it. Yep. Worth considering. Thank you. Listed below that, we have a number of service contracts in addition to shopping this out all of the time as often as we possibly can. They're all listed there from last year's to this year. Some are biennial, like our boiler inspections. There is no cost for that because that doesn't happen every single year, just as some highlights. And there are other technologies which have been added on as service contracts. This covers everything from security system maintenance to snow plowing, sprinklers and smoke alarm, drinking water inspection, state of Connecticut. You'll see a list of them, tick treatment, software for surveying our community and our staff and our students during our climate surveys. You'll see playground canopies installation removal as one. You'll see Performance Matters data system, which is Power Schools that we utilize all of the time to maintain all of our student data. There are other, outlier or other pieces in here, such as instrument tuning, pianos, drums, things like that. And then fire pump maintenance. There's a grand list there of all of our services that we utilize and have contracts with for the maintenance of our buildings and to make sure that we're in compliance.
Jeff, I had a question.
Yes.
On some of these vendors, so some of them, I know you're always trying to find like the best possible deal. Are some of these things that can be put into the consortium with like at Advance?
Yeah, we, as often as possibly can, we do.
Like all of these things, like can we get any more of these things into some kind of, so we can get a better deal?
So far, none of the remainder that are on here, because I run this, this list with Rich Carmelich over from Ed Advance to make sure that, hey, is there anything else that I'm missing out on that we could take advantage of as a consortium? Nothing else that's listed here,
Okay, thank you.
of course. Property and liability insurance is listed here. And again, these rates are given to us by Kerma. Communications, you'll see an increase there as well for our internet. Internet service provider stays the same, but our communications, which is our telephonic communications throughout the district, is listed. Maintenance supplies is about the same. Heating oil, you'll see a savings of about $5,000. And then leasing and copying at the end is another savings of about $3,000 negotiated contracts there. Grand total there for a dollar variance, which is, reported earlier when we looked at some overarching things, is about $30,000. Under employee benefits, as mentioned before, one of our major cost increases is our medical and dental insurance. Brown & Brown is our broker, which provides coverage for a large block. Had advised us to prepare for an 11.6 increase, which, if you look on the dollar variance, is about $151,000 for the Board of Education. I know the town has the same increase at 11.6, and many other school boards and districts have the same. We met as a group earlier, probably in November or so, and this amount has not fluctuated since in terms of their brokering on our behalf, in terms of driving that down or decreasing. I know the thought might be to go out and shop other insurance providers, but that has not been realized as of this point. Remainder of some of the increases there are Social Security and Medicare. And then one of the offsets that we were pleasantly surprised with was a $51,000 savings in our pension fund provided by the town, that information.
So the town told you that you saved money there?
Yeah, which was pretty
Do you know
incredible.
how that was possible?
I believe that was through the folks that had taken advantage of or had these pensions through the town have either retired or are, and we don't have as many people within this pension fund, so that had decreased.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Down below as well, the admin travel, again, under employee benefits, was moved to the admin line under employee benefits. So the dollar variance there, again, that was posted as one of those overarching of 131,672. Pupil transportation is, how our children move to and from school all of the time. These are contracted rates. These are done. It's usually within a 2 or 3 year contract. So the most recent obviously is with DATCO, and we do this and we'll continue to work with Region 7 to realize savings. But the increased costs are listed there on the right-hand side with the total variance for special ed, summer school transportation, and regular day-to-day transportation with a variance of about $86,000 from last year to this year. And these are contractually based. Fuel costs for transportation does fluctuate, obviously depending on the cost of fuel. Communications, no major changes there. Just making sure that we have ample funds for postage and then job postings as they come up. We do those electronically, social media, we post them throughout. And then postage is obviously sending home any documentation that is necessary from meetings, most predominantly PPT meetings or any other information that we need to send home to our parents and families. Second to last is our preliminary capital expenditure requests from the town. So I want to go over these. Our district-wide technology, again, working with Paul and the team, looking at replacing staff laptops, which have aged tremendously. Some are 8, 9, 10 years old. And then we need approximately 48 port network switches at a cost of $15,000. Our security grants, that's our Department of Justice and our 2 Connecticut state grants. Our local match is approximately $157,000 over the course of each year. And that, again, affords us the $1.3 million overall for our security infrastructure upgrades. An additional $11,000 is being requested for desktop computers. That's for office staff, our nurses in central office. These are all outdated. And then our IAQ and HVAC inspections. Special thanks again to our subcommittees that have met and helped with that. And we sent out RFPs and have contracted with Enviromed. Our indoor air quality yearly, we've contracted for $15,675. And our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, which has to be done once every 5 years, is at a price of $28,440. So those, I'm on the capital expenditures.
That doesn't look like mine.
Backup plan. 1, 2, 3, and I want one for Liz too. That would help.
I thought maybe it was me.
Thank you. It's coming. Megan, can you do me a favor? Yeah, can you walk those over just in case? Thank you. Sorry, I thought you had the pile of them. Thank you, Deirdre. So let me just go back to the IAQ and HVAC inspections. Indoor air quality has to be reported yearly, according to our legislature, which has imposed this upon us, is an indoor air quality test that has to be conducted yearly. That was contracted with Enviromed. And then the heating, ventilation, air conditioning has to be inspected once every 5 years. And that's starting next year. That's at $28,440. For Antolini, we're looking at a presentation system. Currently, within our PPT meetings, our staff are handing a laptop to each other and passing it around to have virtual meetings. So that is one component of this request. And then our Promethean boards continue to increase our technology within classroom settings. The painting that was removed from previous budgets is placed here in the Capitol, and also the paving of the walkway at Antolini, which we had to change over to meet the criteria of our IAQ for this year, IAQ meaning indoor air quality. Bakerville, replacing that area again there for painting and exterior trim replacement. And then additional painting over at New Hartford, grand total of $285,515 for our preliminary capital expenditure requests.
Did the one for Bakerville, does that also include the rotting trim
Yes,
or
that's,
whatever you had before?
yes, exterior trim replacement. Yep.
Jeff, are we not doing the Chromebook replacement program any longer?
We are, but we're in good shape for that. So now we're focusing more on the staff and both at the school levels and over at the central office levels.
So we'll be resuming that in maybe a year or so?
Probably, yeah. To cycle through again, yep. And then for the timeline that's listed here, also noted Penny's recommendations to add some of the budget timeline agenda items or meeting dates, and I will make sure I do that, amend this timeline, and then send that back out to the board and to publish that publicly as well.
I have a question on the capital. The indoor air quality, is that a test?
Yes,
Why is that considered capital?
because it's over 10,000, which I believe is the minimum requirement
Okay.
for services.
Oh, that's why it's not under service
Right,
contracts?
right.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep.
And why can't we have a computer lab? Like in the lower school, in the lower grades, instead of the little kids having Chromebooks?
Do you mean a physical room?
Someplace,
Because our technology right now is portable, if that's what you mean. So iPads may travel to different classrooms versus students going to a section of the library as once upon a time was.
like 3 librarians ago in Bakerville, there used to be where the librarian went, it was one of the librarian rooms. The children would go in there and there would be laptops for them to do their exercises
Understood.
on and to learn how to do things. Why don't we still have that?
So we do to a degree, but it's just more mobile. So
Oh.
students may come to the library to work on keyboarding here, but they also have the ability to work on keyboarding in their classrooms should extra time be merited, or if it's one of their centers in literacy, so they could work on keyboarding there. But we have mobile units that can transfer iPads to different classrooms and things of that nature. So if you think about checking out a book at the library and then taking it home with you, and it's mobile, right? It could read the book anywhere. The same thing with our Chromebooks and our iPads and those technologies. They go to the kids and they could be borrowed in different classrooms all the time.
It's just, there's a couple of parents that have children in the lower grades, like in kindergarten, and they don't seem to understand why those children that are so young need to have a Chromebook. Why they can't do their Chromebook work, because the Chromebooks, I understand, don't go home with them.
Correct.
They stay here. So why can't they have a computer lab in the school that instead of buying all those little kids Chromebooks, it would save us some money if we just had a computer lab in Bakerville and New Hartford?
So we do, but we're trying to be conscious of not buying one across the board for everyone to just access in the moment. Those are logged out and then brought to the classrooms.
Oh.
And then I know they have additional ones in the library and media center as well. So it's not just one element of that, having that, but there's no computer lab that there
Okay.
used to be. That was your original question.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that conclude?
That concludes my Board of Education presentation of the 24-25 proposed superintendent's budget. Round one. Yes.
Are there any last questions regarding the budget that was just presented? Brian?
Well, I hate to bring up an elephant in the room, but the ASO is not costed out in here with an estimate or anything like that.
Correct. Until policy is completed, job description perhaps, then we're talking other additional costs relative to insurance, which we've talked about before.
Mhm.
But until that's official at the board level, I want to make sure we do things in the right and orderly manner.
And another question, there was money allocated this year that even if we were to hire someone next week, hasn't been spent, and that would be prorated, I'm guessing. Can any of that money that was pulled from other budget items this year be spent to downsize this budget,
No.
like on books or something like that? No?
No, once voted on referendum, that money has to be allocated for that particular fiscal year, unless we're given an exemption through the Board of Finance to have it be utilized in a non-lapsing account, but that does not count against the budget. And I've also asked the auditors that same question, and that is not recommended. So monies that are set forth for that particular year have to be used in that year. Cannot be then taken and then used in another year.
Well, what I'm asking is, could they be used to buy stuff that you've planned for next year? Physical items like books and things like that. And then you can subtract it from next year's budget because you bought it this year.
I think that would be under the premise that we have a surplus in our
Right.
current year. Right, which
Yeah.
we don't have.
I don't, right now, no. And I don't also want to disqualify us from certain grants, which we would get the monies set for by expending those funds during that fiscal year. If we do that, then we're going to lose that opportunity. Like that $40,000 for the Small Town Right to Read grant.
Yeah,
But
we
I
always
understand
keep-
your
We
point.
always keep those guardrails around the budget, for the budget years. But to your point, again, this year, with the hiring of the additional teacher because of the enrollment increase, that non-lapsing account is going to be requested to help fund the overrun. So thank you, Jeff. And we'll move on to the next budget item, but the request of the board is between now and March 5th to go through this budget again. This was meant to be an informational session of what's in the budget between now and the 5th. We won't flip through this again line by line on the 5th. The ask is that you go through this in between now and then and come and truly ask the hard questions. Right? There's, clearly we have a major budget pressure right now, right? And we need to figure out how to work through that. And if you could come with hard questions for Jeff next meeting on the 5th.
My last comment regarding budget, I talked to all of my colleagues, again, a tremendous amount of us that I've spoken with as a superintendent's group are facing these very same challenges. Budgets are currently ranging anywhere from 6 to 13 of asks because of the fiscal cliff, because of the proposed governor's budgets, and because of special education costs across the board. So just again, I appreciate your time. I really appreciate your questions. Thank you for your continued support, and I look forward to our continued work and collaboration to make this the best possible budget we can for our community and taking into account all of the factors that weigh on our shoulders every single day. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is routine business, approval of the minutes from the February 6, 2024 meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the February 6, 2024 meeting.
Motion by Penny, a second. Second, all those in favor signify by raising your
We
hand.
need to have discussion first.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I gotta have discussion first. Penny got me. Any discussion?
Sorry.
No, you're good. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Motion passes.
Elizabeth, did you get a copy of that new capital page? Huh?
I think that was the
Okay,
one emailed, the one that came in the packet.
Okay.
It's an old one.
okay, just checking.
All right, moving on to old business, second reads of 4 policies. I'll turn it over to Penny.
Thanks. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, changes were made.
Are there any questions or changes you'd like to see?
Is there anything additional? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve second reading of the policy and regulation 5142.2 armed security officer. Motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Russell, second by Frank. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Kristen opposed. So that passes, we have here today 8, so 7-1.
Yep.
Okay, you want to move on to next policy?
The next one is P4117.6, personnel certified, exit survey interviews. We went through this the last time and went over the form that we're using when someone does leave our employment. Are there any corrections or questions, discussion?
Entertain a motion? Motion to approve. Motion to approve policy 4117.6 personnel exit survey interviews by Tim Russell. Do we have a second? Second by Frank. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
All right, the next one is 9323. It's a bylaw. Bylaws of the board, construction of the agenda. Is this what is written in red? Is this new?
No, these are just the original
Oh, okay.
recommendations, and
Oh,
both of
okay.
these next two bylaws are our current practice. This just codifies it and enters it into our
Yep.
bylaws of the Board of Education
Okay.
for New Hartford.
Any comments, questions, discussion?
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve policy 9323, structure of the agenda.
Motion by Tom Buzzy.
It's not a policy. It doesn't have a
Oh,
P.
bylaw. Second by Deirdre. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And the second one, the last one is bylaw 9324, advanced delivery of meeting materials. Comments, questions, discussion? Your turn.
Motion to approve. No, I'll make a motion to approve. Bylaw 9324, advanced delivery of meeting materials. Seconded by Deirdre. Any discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. All right, thank you, Penny.
Yep.
Moving on to the next agenda item under new businesses, discussion and possible action on armed security officer. So now that we have a policy in place, this agenda item was placed on here for further discussion and any action that the board would like to take on the next steps for an armed security officer, which would, I think, include, the next step would be the development and creation of a job description and requirements, which again would go back to our security committee under an executive session for discussion purposes. Any discussion? Yes, Kristen.
I'm obviously not a huge fan of the armed security officer. I just think that given the budget that we just reviewed and the huge increase that we are going back for and asking year over year, that adding an additional 10% to the increase for one security guard for next year is a huge ask. I think it's probably unlikely we're going to get the entire additional budget that we're requesting from the town. And I just think that this is probably a little premature for us to be doing this while we're still working through all of these things that we're legally required to provide to our schools. Thank you.
I would like to speak. Am I
Yes.
allowed to speak?
Yeah.
So how long have we been at this now? It's almost a year and a half? The due diligence that we've done on the security, armed security. So as we've already discussed previously, the special education budget is going to continue to increase year after year exponentially. So I guess my question is, when and at what point do we say, well, let's put a security guard in place now into the budget? It's not going to go down next year. It didn't go down last year. And I think that we would be remiss if we did not move forward with, this is not something that's just, we randomly came up with and we've discussed it for a month. We have done all of the steps, more than the steps that were asked of us to implement this process. So again, the budget is not going to keep going down. Special education keeps going up. teachers' salaries, benefits, all that stuff is going to continue to go up. And at what point do we not put money in place to protect our children? Is my question. So I'm in favor of moving this forward as I have been from the beginning and to stop delaying even further this process.
I think I hear what you're saying, and I understand the work that everyone has been putting forward. From somebody who just joined the board, and from I was able to understand as a member of the public prior to joining the board, it seemed as though this process was started as a foregone conclusion that an armed security officer would be put into the schools. So I understand the frustration that people feel having spent a lot of time on this, but I really just want to understand from people who have been part of the process from the beginning, was every avenue explored in terms of deciding whether or not this was necessary, whether or not an armed security officer is necessary, given the roles and responsibilities we're talking about. It might be cheaper to look at a non-armed security officer that would help us get coverage from more schools that can cover off on all of the doors and buildings and reviewing all the process without actually having the extra liability of a weapon in the schools. That's not the way the process has seemed from the outside. So just because it's been going on for a long time doesn't mean that it should be ended with whatever the foregone conclusion was at the beginning. I'm not going to keep up with this all night. I just want everyone to look into their consciences and understand if the process that was undertaken with a true evaluation of all of the options on the table, given all of everything that's at stake.
I just want to address quickly the putting weapons in a school. The whole point of this is to keep weapons out of the school. So having that one guard in there is going to be a deterrent so that other people do not bring weapons into the school. That's the whole point of this thing. To piggyback on Deirdre's comments before, if we don't protect our students, then our problems are going to be a lot bigger than just a budget issue. So I think we need to move forward with this. Like she said, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here. I don't know if I could do this or not. Superintendent, you can let me know, but I'd like to just make the motion to hire the armed security officer right now.
That's on your board chair to determine whether or not, because we can't add, but it's discussion and possible action. So there'd have to be an action course, and that would go through our board chair.
Yeah, so we are, again, it's on the agenda. By request, you can make an action, you can make a motion for an action. It needs to be seconded, discussion, and put up for vote.
I'd like to make the motion for the action.
So can you repeat your motion for me, just for clarity?
To move forward with hiring the armed security officer.
Okay, and Jeff, just to clarify, what is the next step in the hiring process?
So we would need a job description at the security subcommittee meeting to be finalized so that that can actually be posted and then hired for.
Okay, so just for clarity, again, your motion is to go through the steps of creating the, I don't want to speak for you. Is your motion to get right through posting this for employment? Or is it to get to the next action step?
My motion's to get through to posting this for employment and to go through whatever steps need to be done to do that.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, you have to have a second first.
You need a second.
I second his motion.
So we have a motion on the floor to move forward with the armed security officer, creation of a job responsibilities, and post it in the newspaper.
But that's not what he said. He was moving forward with hiring one.
Well,
I thought Jeff said the next step in this was to set up the criteria for the interview process. There's certain steps that we have to go through. We just can't jump from making a policy to hiring a person. There's the making a job description and everything else in between. Wouldn't it have been better to have the motion be that we move forward with making a job description? And then once that's done by the school security committee, then moving forward with the hiring of a person? Or whatever the next step is?
That's not my motion.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
The issue is we just keep going around in circles every single meeting, and this has been going on for 2 years. So the point is to say, yes, we're going to hire and move on to the next step so that that can be done without having the same conversation every single month.
So just amend your motion to move to the next step, which is to start the hiring process and go through the steps of creating the job description and posting the job description. So whatever those steps are that we need to go through, 1 through 4, whatever it is, that just amend your motion so that you can.
I'll amend it to that.
Do you have that?
Yeah.
So if I repeat back what I believe the motion is now, is the current motion on the floor is to move forward through the next steps up to and including posting, interviewing, and hiring.
Correct.
Right. So job description, posting, interviewing, and hiring.
Correct.
That sounds much better.
Do we have a second of the amended motion?
I'll second the amended motion as clarified.
Thank you. Further discussion?
This seems to me like going a little bit out of order. I can understand moving on to the job description, which I would assume would include hours and salary and things like that. But it's kind of bundling 3 steps. We don't even know what the person would get paid, what the hours would be. I don't know how anybody could vote on something without knowing that information. I could not vote on something without knowing what they're going to get paid, without knowing what their hours are going to be, without knowing how it's going to affect the budget. That's a lot. I mean, I could go with the job description being done, but to bundle, I don't even know if that's following Robert's Rules of Order, to throw all that stuff into a bundle like that. Penny would probably know.
I don't. I've just never heard of bundling stuff like that all together. Usually it's one step at a time.
So how do we determine what is appropriate? Who is the person here that knows what the appropriate steps are?
Well, I don't think Robert's Rules of Orders would tell you that, right? We have a policy in place currently. It's a hiring process, right? It'd be as if we were to, again, and I'm speaking for my own, but if we were to ask our superintendent to hire any staff member, right? We motion and approve the staff member, he goes through the hiring process, right?
But you have a contract that says what they're going to get paid and it says what their job description is. We don't have that for this position.
True.
Personally, I think it'd be better if we came up with a job description of what we want this person to do and then proceed to the next step after that. I mean, we have all this money, $1 million something, to do all this infrastructure work that I would rather see done first. I'm not against having an armed guard, an armed security I'm all for protecting our children, but we also have all this money that Jeff went after to fix the infrastructure of our school. We've done nothing. I know he's gone out to bid, but we need to do that work first. And I mean, did we ever figure out why the teachers are opposed? The majority of them were opposed to having an armed security guard. I mean, that's a big factor also. They're the ones that are in the building with our children. We're not in the building with our children or grandchildren, but the teachers are, and they said no. And why did they say no? Did we ever ask them? Do we have a reason why? No, we never bothered. I mean, the way it stands now, I will not vote for an armed security guard.
Yes, please.
So I hear Tim's frustration because when I saw this on the budget, on the agenda, I thought we were going to move forward with instructing superintendent to go through the hire process. I understand now that, yeah, there's some step missing. Now, even if we go through with Tim's motion to do 3 steps or 4 steps, whatever that is, it's unlikely we're gonna have a person in these buildings before the end of the school year, even going through all these steps in one. So we're looking at next fall. At this point, no matter what we do, we kick the can and we try to, make sure we get our opinions and so on and so forth. So in order to get this to move forward, if we have to do 1 step at a clip, maybe that doesn't really change the goal of several people on this board to get someone in these buildings. Because I'd like to have the board all at least some people who are on the fence feel more comfortable for the guard rather than say, I'm not doing it because we haven't gone through steps properly. I feel their frustration because I'm in the same boat. We've done a year and a half. However, it's unlikely we're going to get someone to the door now anyway. It's already March, April, May, 2 years old. So maybe we should just go through the steps, but with a direct purpose to get this thing off the dime. That's my opinion.
I think that I concur with Tom that we need to go through the steps. We've been literally doing this for almost 2 years. And we have sufficiently researched, done all of the due diligence. In fact, we've done more than the due diligence to get this passed through. So I would be fine with doing what Tom has suggested, is that the goal is we're moving this forward and we'll go through more hoops and more steps if we have to get that done. So I'm not sure if he has to amend his motion. Do we have to amend that again, or how do we do that?
You can vote for it and vote it down.
Or
Or
he
he
can,
can pull it
he
off.
can rescind his
pull it
motion.
back. He can rescind it.
Hearing the board's discussion, I will rescind that and move to go forward with the next step in this process.
Deirdre has to pull back her second.
I pull back my second.
Okay, thank you. So the next step, right, just to be clear, I don't think we can't go forward with just saying the next step. Let's define the next step, please. And I believe the next step, as we've discussed, is to have our security committee meet and create a roles and responsibilities and job description for an armed security officer.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to create the job responsibilities for the armed security officer.
Job description.
Job description.
We have a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion to move to the next step, which is to create the roles and responsibilities and job description for an armed security officer. Any discussion?
Just one question, does that include salary and benefits and as part of the job description?
I'm going to defer to
Yes, it will, first and foremost, the responsibilities and expectations will be listed. And then when it's posting time, utilizing the monies that were earmarked from this current year's budget that we're living in, making sure we take a look at that carefully to provide the best possible salaried situation that we can. And that would be in the posting. Post the posting, then we would be creating our interview committee. From what I described in an earlier meeting, we want mental health professional, school administration, myself, resident trooper on the interview panel, and then go through the hiring process, making sure all the credentials, certificates are up to date and met, as well as a psychological exam and things of those natures that were mentioned before. So job description will accompany the salary at the posting level when the position is posted.
I have a question, which is, I thought what you're describing to me sounds like we would be making a direct hire of a security guard. I thought we had discussed the possibility of contracting with a company so that we would have backup for a security guard. So does that vary the process that would need to go forward if we decided to look at working with a company to hire a security guard versus interviewing one ourselves? I just don't.
Sure. I think that setting our job description and our criteria are first and foremost paramount so that we can find the right match. So even if working with a contracted employment agency, that those things are in alignment. So if we create our job description and X company says, I have this individual, but they don't meet all those criteria, then that's not a good fit for us. That's not someone that we would even interview. So I think that we need to create our job description first.
Is it the intention of, if we pass this motion and this task gets passed on to the security subcommittee, that what comes out of that subcommittee will be a document that can be posted to the street, posted to the street for action?
Yes, once the job description is comprised, we certainly can. And we have the funding source from the monies that were earmarked for this current year's budget that would be able to support that hire.
So the information coming out of the security next time that security subcommittee meets, and the document that's prepared out of that subcommittee, when it gets put in front of the board, at that point, if the board approves that document, it'll be authorization for you to proceed with hiring a armed security officer, whether it be through a
Agents.
firm or a direct hire. And at that point, there'll be no ambiguity as to where we're moving, as to where we're going with this issue.
Correct.
Thank you.
So the monies that you had set aside before, I mean, are you assuming that this will all be done before the end of the fiscal year? And you can use those monies that you had set aside?
I never make assumptions, Penny. I always operate with real time, what's happening. Those monies are still there earmarked. Some of them have been expended, as I reported in an earlier board meeting. We had earmarked originally 70,000 or so, and some of those monies had to be utilized for asbestos inspection and process. So we were left with, I think, between $50,000 and $55,000 that are still there to be utilized.
But if this doesn't get done before the end of this fiscal year, then that money will go back into
The general fund.
the general fund. And then you would have to put it into next year's, well, any way you look at it, you'll have to put it into next year's budget.
It would have to be added. It'd be a request to have added on.
Along with the people that Mike wanted to hire for next year,
Mhm.
the special ed people.
The entirety of the budget.
So it would be
one
more,
element.
it would be more than the 8% that you're projecting.
At this current time, yes, it would be more than 8%.
Okay.
So that I understand the motion in the background to it from what you just said, Jeff. So the motion to create the job description is going to go to the security committee. You're going to create the job description. As part of that job description, we're going to establish a salary range in the benefits package that would be offered.
Correct.
In addition to that, we'll establish at the security committee level, the hiring process and the interview team that would be used for, once we had candidates.
Yeah, that was previously discussed in terms of who's going to comprise the interview committee, correct?
Yeah, I'm just, we're going to write it down. right?
Yeah, sure.
Yep, at the same time. So all that's encompassed in the motion to create the job description at the security committee level.
Yeah. The budget we just reviewed, obviously, to Frank's point, what this armed security officer is not in the budget, and what Penny just said. So looking at this timeline and seeing when the security subcommittee is going to meet, it would behoove everyone if we saw how that would affect the budget we're voting on now. I'm just not seeing how that's going to fit into this workshop schedule that we have here. If you have any thoughts on that, but assuming it passed, I mean, I guess I'm not going to assume it passes. It may not pass, but when and if it does, how is that going to get reconciled into this budget within this schedule so that it can be properly evaluated by the board and this March 16th presentation to the Board of Finance? I mean, that should be reflected in there if the board decides to move forward with this hire. I just want to get your thoughts on how that might get put in there properly.
The next course of action would be to schedule the security subcommittee meeting as soon as possible and have time to review. So that'll be my work to try to connect with those that are on the security subcommittee to schedule that prior to the March 16th budget workshop meeting. There are opportunities, if you look in the timeline, to continue that discussion before finalized, but the goal would be to have that done before March 16th so that we're prepared when we go to the Board of Finance.
I think any member of the committee or our board has the opportunity to ask that to be added to the budget even at the March 5th meeting. Right?
That is correct.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we're going to bring it to a vote. So this is a motion to move forward to the next step in the hiring of an armed security officer, which will include creation of the job description. That job description will include a salary range and benefits. It will also establish the process for interviewing and write down the process. Is there is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
No. 6-2.
0 being the no abstentions. Yes, Penny and Kristen, yes.
Jay raised his hand to talk.
I can't do that. Okay.
I have a question. The budget gets approved at the March 19th meeting, correct? Or you have, let me back that up. When you go to the budget workshop on March the 16th, you should have your budget ready with whatever additions you're going to be making, because you're making it then to the Board of Finance.
We'd have to make the adjustments at the March 5th meeting. If any. Right?
At the March what meeting?
March 5th.
Okay,
Yeah, we still have one other workshop on the 5th of March before.
And when we go to the Board of Finance, it's gonna, again, there's likely, let's say we're coming back to look at it again, right?
or when you go to the budget hearing on the 16th, you should have everything ready for them to look at, and then they ask you all those questions, but they don't approve it until their special meeting, I believe, on the 19th.
Right.
I could be wrong. But I rarely am.
That's not true, Penny. Come on. Okay. The last item on our agenda before adjournment is executive session. Could I get a motion to enter executive session?
I make a motion, we go into executive session at 8:08
To discuss personnel matter.
to
Yes.
discuss a personnel matter.
Thank you.
Can I have a second, please? Thank you.
Motion Penny,
All those in favor?
second by Kristen. All those in favor? Thank you all.